more on the mixed notes for chapter 2, page 2. So Edna deposit. So again, this is reading the problems carefully, understanding what you're given and asked to find, and how you plug it into the calculator or use the simple interest if it's a simple interest case. So Edna deposited $3,000 into an account earning 5% interest compounded every 6 months. That means twice a year. How much interest will she earn after 3.5 years? And so it's a compound interest case, so I can use the TVM solver. She deposited $3,000, and so it means a one-time deposit, right? There's no per month, per 6 months, or whatever. So that's my present value. And so it's asking for the compounding case where I plug in a present value, get a future value, and then the final question is what interest did we earn? All right, so I have to find, in order to do interest, I have to figure out my future value, right? Because interest in this case is future value minus present value, right? How much you put in, it sits there for 3.5 years. How much came out? The difference is the interest. All right, so plugging it in the TVM solver, it's going to be every 6 months, so twice a year for 3.5 years. It gets compounded. Interest gets reinvested. Our interest rate is 5. Present value is a negative 3,000. PMT, you've got to remember there isn't any, and it's important that you put the 0 there. Future value is what we want to figure out. Payments and compounding period are 2 in this case, right? Because it's compounded every 6 months. That's twice a year. All right, so figure out the future value. How much did she earn on her $3,000 for 3.5 years? It won't be too much because it's a very short time period, so it shouldn't be much more than $3,000, and it isn't. It's $3,566.06 of change if I round to the penny. And so to figure, and again, that's not the question. So remember, you've got to read these problems very carefully on the quiz. On the quiz, if it asks for interest, don't give this answer. That's the wrong answer. We want to know how much extra, and so to figure out interest, you have to do one more step. You have to take that future value minus the amount she invested, the present value, and so the answer would be the $5,666.06. That's the answer. So this would be, if you were solving this on the quiz, if you put the future value in, it's wrong because you didn't answer the question. So make sure you're very careful reading these. It comes down to making sure you understand what you're asked to find and how you plug it into the calculator. All right, next question on this page. Frank borrowed $25,000 to buy a new car. He'll pay it back with regular monthly payments of $471.78 over the next 5 years. His loan was charging 5% interest per year compounded monthly. At the end of 5 years, how much total interest will Frank have paid? Okay, now there's a couple questions like this on the mixed review, and I believe there's one like this in the homework, where they actually have given you all of the information you need. You don't have to do any plugging into the calculator because they gave you the present value, the $2,500. They gave you the payments. Future value would be 0 because you're paying it off. And so there's nothing to solve for in the TVM. So everything's been given to you. All right. N we know is 5 times 12, which would be our 5 times 12, which would be 60. We know our interest rate, right, is 5%. We know our present value, the amount we borrowed. We know the payments. We know the future value is 0. And so you'll notice there's nothing to solve for. And so what this is this is sort of one of those where students overthink the problem. They're just asking you to figure out the interest case, which you can't plug in the calculator and do. This is the one you have to figure out on your own. And so there's nothing to do in the solver. No formula to plug in, nothing to do. You have to figure out my interest, all right, on the loan. And so in this case, the interest on the loan would be all your payments to the bank, how much you paid off the loan, minus the amount you borrowed, right? The loan, the present value. All of your payments would be your payments N times, right? Your N times you're going to make a monthly payment minus the present value. And so 60 is N, right? That's what N is. 60 times, he's going to make a payment of $471.78. So that's all his payments. He borrowed $25,000, and so the difference between how much he paid and how much he borrowed is the interest. And that's all this problem's asking you to do. It's just asking you to solely figure that out. So there's no formula that you have to plug in. There's nothing that you have to do in the calculator solver key. You just have to figure out this loan stuff, or how much he ended up paying extra on his loan. How much was the interest? All right, so you multiply that out, find the difference, and it comes out to be $3,306.80 in interest on the loan. All right, so he pays back the $25,000 plus $3,306.80 total. All right, and that's the one that was all we were looking for in that particular question. But a lot of times students find that question hard because there isn't anything to plug into the solver. All right, you have all of the information you need. You're just going to figure out. And so being able to figure out interest is one of those skills we want you to have coming out of the chapter 2. All right, which again requires you to do a little bit of thinking. All right, I have to think, well, how do I figure out interest? Well, in this case, I figure out interest by taking all of my payments to my loan, subtracting about how much I borrowed, and then the amount, the difference between what I paid and what I borrowed is my interest. All right, next problem. All right, Derek and Claire plan to take out a loan. So we're doing a lot of loan cases on this page. To buy a new home. They plan to take out a 20-year loan at 5.4 compounded monthly for a new home that cost $160,000. They plan to make a 10% down payment, which is usually standard for houses. What is their monthly payment on this 20-year loan? So we're looking for their PMT, monthly payment. And then also interest, because again, a lot of times that's what we want to figure out. So this is sort of practicing that in this review set. Okay, so first of all, we have to figure out they're not borrowing the whole $1,600, right? Their loan is that amount minus the down payment. All right, which we have to figure out what the down payment is. Well, it's 10% of the value of the house. And so you take the percent as a decimal, 0.1, 10% of $160,000 is $16,000. All right, and so they're going to make a down payment of $16,000, right? 10% of what they owe. And so we're going to borrow the rest of it. So the loan is, the present value, the loan is $160,000 minus the $16,000. And so they're only going to borrow the rest, which comes out to be $144,000. Double check my mental math there, just to make sure I did the right value. Yeah. All right. So the loan amount. So this is how much they're actually borrowing, right? This was their loan for the rest of it. They made a down payment of $16,000, which was 10% of the value of the house. And so that's the present value. So that's step 1, figuring out what the down payment is. And then step 2 is, well, figuring out how much do they end up paying for their loan, the future value. Or payments, not future value is 0. What are their payments on their loan, right? Monthly payments is what we're looking for. And so we're looking for PMT. And then interest. I still have to do interest. Alright, so filling it out on the calculator. N is our compounding period times time. So our compounding period was monthly. 12 months over 20 years. So 240 payments. Interest rate was 5.4. The loan was that $1,440. Remember, the loan is in debt, so it's negative. We want to figure out our payments. Right? And so remember, when we pay off a loan, we're going to pay it off. So the future values mean we're going to pay it completely off, right? And so at the end of the 20 years, they'll owe the bank $0, right? At the end of 20 years, they'll make their last payment to the bank. and the future value would be 0. They now owe the bank nothing. The house is theirs. They owe them nothing. And so you've got to remember in these loan cases, future value is 0. Payment period, compounding period in this case is both monthly, so 12, and so I'm figuring out the PMT first. Alright, plugging it into the calculator, the payments per month are going to be fairly large, $985.44. That's the monthly payment. So every month, for 20 years, they have to pay a little under $1,000, right? $985.44. Right, so that's the first question, right? The first question was, what was their monthly payment? And then the last question is, well, how much do they end up paying in interest on the house, right? How much interest, all right? So second question was interest. Right? How much extra did they pay for the house? And so we're just figuring out interest, so it's only interest on the loan. And so remember, figure out interest on loans. It's your number of payments, total, right? Total number of payments minus the amount you borrowed, right? This is what you paid. This is how much you borrowed. So in this case, they paid 240, right? N is 240. 240 times, they paid $985.44. That's how much they paid back on their mortgage. They borrowed, again, you use the borrowed amount, because that's the amount that's incurring interest, right? You don't have to worry about the original. We only care about what they borrowed. They're only incurring interest on the $444,000. All right, so make sure you're careful on that. Multiply that out and subtract, and that'll give you your total interest. If you multiply that out, the extra amount they spend on their house was quite a bit. Again, mortgages typically are quite a bit. They spent an extra, and this is just interest on the loan, over 20 years it incurred interest, monthly interest. And so $92,505.60 is how much interest they end up paying on their house loan, on their mortgage loan, which again is about normal. All right, that's about typical for mortgages. What you do is you hope over the 20 years your property values rise by the same amount as your interest, or go over it is what you're hoping. So you're hoping your house is worth $92,000 more than when you originally borrowed it or bought it. All right, next example. All right, the last one on this page. All right, my car depreciates by 9.5% per year. Highlight that, that's important. Depreciates per year. The original value, so I bought my car for $22,000. Find its value 4 years later. And so this one, again, it's been a while since we did this. This was one of the special sort of problems from 2.2, section 2.2 case. Depreciating per year. Now, it doesn't come out and say compounding, but it is compounding. Every year, I lose 9.5% of whatever my car's value was the previous year. So the first year, I lose 9.5% on $22,000. There we go. Spit it out. The next year, though, I lose 9.5% value on whatever it was at that time. And the third year would be whatever it was at that time, and the fourth year, whatever it was at this time. And so it is a compounding case. It's compounding yearly. So first thing is the compounding period is once a year. The second thing is it's depreciate, and so my interest rate is negative. All right, present value is this. Future value is what we're looking for. Time is 4 years. And so in this case, that's what you have to remember. All right, so I do plug it into the TVM solver, and compounding period is 1, years is 4. So 4 times I lose 9.5% value on my car, right? 4 times over 4 years. The amount I lose, and this is the part you have to remember, since I'm losing the amount, I'm losing 9.5. And so I've got to remember it's a negative 9.5. All right, present value, well, the original value of my car was again, I bought the car, so I no longer have that $22,000, so it's a negative. If I wanted to sell the car is what we're looking for. So remember, there's no payments. That's got to be 0, and you have to remember to put that 0 in. There's no payments. I just want to know what's the future value. So suppose 4 years down the road, I want to sell my car. Well, I want to know what the value of my car would be if that's what it depreciates by. And so I'm looking for the future value. the payments per year, compounding per year is 1 because it's a yearly depreciation. All right, and you've just got to remember that that's yearly means 1. Alright, so what's the value of my car after 4 years? Well, I plug it in. It should be less than 22,000. So if you forget to put this negative here, you'll know that this should be less than 22,000, and so that will remind you to put a negative on your percent. Alright, so when my car depreciates down to $14,757.64, if I wanted to sell it in 4 years, as long as, again, it's not been dinged up, I can sell it for around $14,757. Get so $57.64. It's hard to read that. 64 cents in 4 years. That's what the value of the car would be. Right, and so again, that's a special case that we talked about in section 2.2. If you want to go back and look at 2.2, this is a special case. So whenever it's a depreciation, it's always a compounding case. It's always a yearly, and it doesn't come out and spell it out for you, but that means I lose 9% per year on the previous value of my car. And so you have to remember that in this special case. Alright, so that finishes up page 2 of the mixed review. So we'll stop the video there.